unexpected live stream. Becoming very frequent, these unexpected live streams, because there's never a dull moment in the Delphi case. There is not a day goes by without there being at least one new court filing. Sometimes it's multiple. And this one is very interesting. I haven't actually read it yet, but the title of it is very interesting. So what has happened is, why isn't your name Green Plant Lady? Because there's no memberships on this channel. This is Michelle Walks. I only have memberships over on Michelle After Dark. So no one's green on this channel. That's why. Yeah, so what has happened is Richard Allen, via his counsel, has put in another motion for a Franks hearing. Another one. Oh, they are not. They are relentless. Absolutely relentless. I love it. I haven't even talked about this. This came out yesterday. I think this was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. This is from David Hennessy, who is the lawyer acting on behalf of Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin, because in the Delphi case, the lawyers need lawyers. And this is to ask for a continuance on the contempt hearing. But we're not going to talk about that today. I was actually going to talk about this later today. I was going to do a live later to talk about this, but I'm not anymore, because this is very, very, very interesting. So we're going to do this. It's 9 pages. It's a request for a third Franks hearing. What is a Franks hearing, I hear you say? Well, we talked about Franks hearings, back in September. Just found a website with a nice handy-dandy definition here. Why is it? There we go. We talked about Franks hearings back in September when the memorandum came out. And in short, counsel can ask for a Franks hearing if they've got reason to believe that the cops lied to get a search warrant. If they lied to obtain a search warrant and it can be proven, then any result of that search warrant has to be thrown out. So potentially very, very important for the trial. Because it would mean that anything that they found from Richard Allen's house or vehicle or any other possession that they searched would be thrown out. So it would mean that the bullet was thrown out. We don't know what the results were. We know the things that were taken from Richard Allen's house, but we don't know what the results of that was. But all of that would go. And essentially, there'd be no case. Throw out the bullet and there's no case. So I'm going to read through this motion here. And like I said, it's just 9 pages. It's not 136 pages like the last one was. No, three of cats. No. You can't be a member on this channel. I mean, listen, if you want memberships on this channel, I can put memberships on this channel. But I'm kind of like not expecting people to pay memberships on 2 channels. So I have memberships over on Michelle After Dark. I could put memberships on this channel if people really want them, but I haven't done so far. That's why you can't become a member on this channel. Yes, you can become a member on my other one, yeah, on Michelle After Dark. So if you head over to Michelle After Dark, you can join on there. All right. Okay, let's read through this motion. Richard Allen's third Franks notice and request for Franks hearing based upon newly discovered evidence and request for finding of facts and conclusion of law upon any ruling on this request. Comes now the accused Richard Allen by and through counsel, files his third Franks notice and request for Franks hearing based upon newly discovered evidence. In support of said motion, the accused states the following. Absolutely, they're just doing their job. They're doing a very fine job as well. Fine job. Like I said, if I ever get accused of a crime in Indiana, the first people that I'm going to call are Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin. And if I have to sell all of my organs to pay for them, I will. Yeah, look, it's not about the fact that there's 2 murdered children. We know that this case is about 2 murdered children, but cops can't go about lying and concealing evidence in order to get a search warrant. Surely that's a bad thing, and it doesn't matter what the crime is. It doesn't matter what the charges are. Cops can't go about lying to get search warrants. They can't in my country, and they shouldn't be allowed to in any other country either. It's about due process. It's about following the law from all sides. It's not about 2 murdered children. The victims are getting lost. Absolutely, Suzanne. The victims have been lost in this case for a long time. But there ever cannot be justice for Abby and Libby if Richard Allen does not get a fair trial. And if it's true that cops lied to get a search warrant, then it's the fruit of the poisonous tree, to coin a phrase. Can't do it. Anyhow, on September 18th, 2023, the defence filed its first Franks notice, which consisted of a 136-page memorandum in support detailing, 1, certain evidence that Tony Liggett, who was a detective at the time, he's now the sheriff, failed to include in his search warrant application. 2, certain evidence that was detailed in his search warrant application that was false. And 3, evidence that law enforcement had acted in an intentional manner on multiple instances, attempting to conceal evidence from the defence and failing to tell the truth under oath concerning certain evidence. The defence incorporates the contents of its first Franks notice and memorandum into this document. So everything that they said then applies. Right? So we're not going to go through and read the whole 136 pages again, because I spent hours and hours and hours on live streams back in September. I don't know how many hours I spent. I don't know. Probably, I don't know, 20, 25, 30. I have no idea. But I spent a long time. So go back and watch those live streams if you want to listen to me getting mad over the things that were in that Franks memorandum. All right. So on October 3rd, 2023, the defence filed its second Franks notice detailing how the prosecution and law enforcement had attempted to conceal the identity of a Purdue professor whose testimony contradicted that of law enforcement officers Tony Liggett and Jerry Holman. This notice was provided as a supplement to the first Franks notice in order to bolster the defense contention that the state of Indiana and law enforcement were acting intentionally and or with reckless disregard of the truth to further support the request for a Franks hearing. Kindness Cake, thank you for the £9.99. Thank you so much. In the event that I'm ever arrested in Indiana, his contribution towards the attorney. Thank you. Yeah, Holman is a problem. So Jerry Holman is with the Indiana State Police. So just to be clear. So Tony Liggett was a detective with Carroll County. He's now the sheriff of Carroll County. Jerry Holman is with the Indiana State Police. Okay. The defense incorporates the contents of its second Franks notice filed on October 3rd into this document. So all of what they've said previous still applies. After Franks 1 and Franks 2 were filed, just before the defense were kicked off the case in October 2023, the defense received certain geofencing evidence that the defense, did not have the opportunity to fully examine, explore, or discuss with its experts. So they're bringing back the geofencing data. This map that they found in the discovery of, I talked about it, was it yesterday in a video? I also did a live stream going through the relevant documentation where that came up. So this was newly discovered information that in October, when they got a discovery dump from the prosecution, they were in the process of going through it all. And then on the 12th of October, Francis said, stop what you're doing. You're not allowed to do any more work on this case. So they had to stop. And then they were kicked off. But now they're back. And they're back with vengeance. They've got vengeance in their hearts now. I mean, I don't blame them. I really don't blame them. Whom is this request submitted? To the court. Is it out for Gull to deny? Yes. I'm preempting what Gull is going to say with my thumb now. Deny, deny, deny. She denied the others, and I can pretty much guarantee she's going to deny this. I don't know how she's getting away with it, but she is. So I think this is going to be denied. But it's creating a lovely little record. All of these motions that are being filed, all of these documents that are being filed, that Gull is deny, deny, deny. Well, in the result of Richard Allen being convicted, this creates a nice little record for the appeals process. So don't think that if she denies it, all is lost. She's just setting the case up for a fall later down the line, potentially. Right. Okay. Just after the defence were reinstated on the case in January 2024, it received certain discovery in the form of a September 22nd, 2023 report authored by Sergeant Jerry Holman, purportedly memorialising an interview Holman, had with a former Purdue professor named Jeffrey Turco. And if you remember from the memorandum, it was just an absolute farce, absolute nonsense. The cops didn't remember who the Purdue professor was. Slick Nick was saying, oh, well, the cops don't know who the Purdue professor was. And then, hey presto, this interview with Jeffrey Turco was there in the discovery. And it's come to light that Jerry Holman knew all along who this professor was and lied about what the professor said. Completely lied about what the professor said. They said that the professor who they couldn't remember the name of or anything like that, couldn't remember any details about who the professor was, but they did remember that they dropped the Odinism theory from the case because the Purdue professor said that the evidence at the crime scene, the sticks and the F on the tree, weren't runes. There was no evidence that there was a runic symbolism. There was no evidence of any kind of religious stroke ritualistic aspect to the crime scene. Complete lie. Turco did not say that at all. He said, in his opinion, there was an attempt to create runes in a ritualistic fashion. An attempt, maybe not a great one, maybe not, maybe like runes that a 5-year-old Norse child might do, with some mistakes, but still it was an attempt. That's what Turco's opinion was. Turco also got the opinion of a Harvard professor. Like his friend from Harvard also said that this was potentially runic. Do I think he's actually a free right now? I don't know what you mean by that. Laying the foundation to delay the speedy trial they asked for. Oh, I don't think so. I don't think this is an attempt to delay the trial. I think this is an attempt to put so much pressure on the prosecution that they lose their heads. I really don't think this is an attempt to delay the trial. Why did they seek out professional opinion on the sticks in the first place? Because they looked like they meant something. So they sought some experts who might know what these sticks and symbolism meant. And then they lied about it. Okay. All right. So both the geofencing evidence and Holman's September 22nd, 2023 report provide new information that supports the defense request for a Franks hearing. Specifically, the defense received certain geofencing evidence that at least 3 persons were in or around the crime scene at the time while the murders were taking place. Now, this is the first time we've seen at least 3 persons. In the previous documentation where the geofencing was mentioned, it said multiple persons. So we've now got a number. At least 3 persons were in or around the crime scene at the time when the murders were taking place, according to law enforcement timelines. So the timeline of the murders, according to what law enforcement said, they've got now evidence to believe that there was at least 3 people in that vicinity at the time when law enforcement said the murders happened. And none of the owners of those phones have any connection to Richard Allen. This geofencing evidence would provide evidence of any of the following scenarios. Those persons walking with the phones are witnesses that would have observed the murders as they were taking place, and none of them have identified Richard Allen. Or those persons walking with the phones were witnesses who observed nothing, as the murders did not take place the afternoon of February 13th. That should be 2017. Andrew Baldwin needs to proofread his documents. But the victims were taken to the crime scene after the search was called off, so in the night. So they were taken away from the scene. Now, this is a theory that a lot of people actually believe, that the reason why there's no blood at that crime scene and why nobody heard anything, nobody saw anything, was because Abby and Libby were taken away from the scene. They were kidnapped and taken away from the scene and then brought back later, like at night. It's a theory. All right, I'm not saying I believe it. It's possible. It would explain why there's no blood at the scene, but the logistics of it. Where did they take them? How did they get them away with nobody seeing them? Where did they take them to? It would mean that there's another crime scene elsewhere that's never been investigated. Who kidnapped them? Who brought them back? Were they dead when they were brought back, or were they alive when they were brought back? Like, and sacrificed in the middle of the night in the woods. You know, it opens up potentially a whole host of other questions. Okay. Or three, or C, those persons walking with the phones were participants in the murders. Now, it could be any one of those three. Any one. Said geofencing evidence was so important to somebody involved in the investigation that they created a map and plotted the movements of these persons, including movements that show at least one of these persons was within 60 to 100 yards of the crime scene at the time while the murders would have been committed according to law enforcement timeline. The phones once again had no connection to Richard Allen. So at least one of them was within 60 to 100 yards of the crime scene. Now, I understand what people are saying. Some people have come into my comments and said it. Some people have made videos about it. I absolutely understand that 60 to 100 yards is just a guideline, right? It's next to nothing. I got the map out in my video yesterday. I looked at the I used the crime scene coordinates from the Ron Logan search warrant. I also used a crime scene marker of kind of where people walk when they're filming themselves at the crime scene. And 60 to 100 yards doesn't get you anywhere close to the road. It doesn't get you even close to the cemetery. It doesn't get you close to Ron Logan's house. It doesn't get you close to the houses on the south side. It's still in the woods. Doesn't even get you to the bridge. But there's only one cell tower within the vicinity. Now, that doesn't mean to say that phones won't ping off other cell towers, right? But there is one in the vicinity. So if a phone, if you're not able to triangulate like the phone signal, then it becomes less precise. So 60 to 100 yards, it might be a little bit more than that, could be less than that. However, this information is not information that has been created by the defense team. This is information that is in the discovery, in the prosecution's own discovery. So once again, like the Odinist theory, that wasn't created by the defense team. That was already in the discovery. So this map is already in the discovery. So somebody from law enforcement took it upon themselves to consider it so important to do this map of all these phones that were moving about in the area at the time that the murders were taking place. So the defense would not be doing their jobs if they didn't consider this. And if law enforcement had this map at the time of Richard Allen's arrest, and at the time, clearly they did have it at the time of Richard Allen's arrest, and importantly in relation to Frank's, at the time that they wrote the search warrant for Richard Allen's property, they had that information. Now, if none of Richard Allen's phones were on that map, then, well, okay. Did you bother to find out who these phones belong to? And in the last set of documentation that mentioned geofencing, we learned that they didn't even bother to interview people who these phones could have belonged to. So they've not bothered investigating the people whose phones were actually there, at least not that's been reported in the discovery that the defence has got. Now, there might be interviews that the defence hasn't got, because Slick Nick's withholding information, he's withholding discovery. And the most important thing for Franks is that that search warrant on Richard Allen's property was written with absolutely no mention of this geofencing information, which they must have gathered in 2017. They must have done. They must have gathered that early on in the investigation. So in October 2022, when Richard Allen's property was searched and then he was arrested, they didn't mention this geofencing information. They didn't mention that Richard Allen's phone wasn't tracked at that scene at all. Wasn't tracked at that scene. So we've no evidence that Richard Allen was there. We've no evidence via phone records. We've no evidence via DNA. We've no evidence via fingerprints. We've no evidence that Richard Allen was actually there at that crime scene. Oh, because he looks a little bit like Bridge Guy. Oh, because he's got clothes that look a little bit like Bridge Guy's. So what? I could walk round my village and I could find you probably if I, give me a few hours and I'll find you 10 guys that look a little bit like Bridge Guy and will be wearing clothes that look a little bit like Bridge Guy's. Nondescript, jeans, boots, and a blue coat. It's nondescript. I don't believe Ron Logan was Bridge Guy. That's my opinion. I think Bridge Guy's younger than Logan. Just lost my chat now. Oh, there we go. It's back. All right. Furthermore, the map shows that the other two phones and the persons carrying those phones were in and around the crime scene between 12:39 and 54 seconds and 5:49 on February 13th, 2017. Now, this is where because do you remember me saying, yesterday's video, was it the day before? All the days meld into one, honestly. Why law enforcement had in this documentation this very specific time, 12:39 and 54 seconds. Why not round it up to 12:40? They were just like taking, all right, we're going to geofence this particular area and we're going to do it for all phones in this particular geofenced area between this time and this time. But no, this is presumably when these phones arrived and then when these phones left. So the map shows the other two phones. So one is right there at the crime scene within 60 to 100 yards of it at least. And the other two were in the area between 12:39 and 54 seconds. So that's more than an hour before Abby and Libby were even dropped off. Kelsey dropped them off at Mia's farm. Her car is seen driving away on the Hoosier Harvey store camera at 1:49. So Abby and Libby were still at home. We're still at home. And one of these phones, or two of these phones, were at that scene. And then there till 10 to 6. That's mind-blowing. That's mind-blowing. Because if there's two phones that were there at 5:49, well, supposedly Richard Allen left. If Richard Allen, according to the PCA, was the guy that Sarah Carbo saw walking west on County Road North when she passed the Who's Your Harvey Store camera at 3:57. And also, we know that Derek German was parked at Mia's farm at that time. Did he see Richard Allen? Libby's dad, did he see Richard Allen? No. No. Unbelievable. So Richard Allen's left, so this can't be. Like some people have said to me, oh, well, what if Richard Allen had a burner phone? Well, all right then. Let's imagine that one of these phones was Richard Allen's burner phone. Well, he hadn't arrived then, and he'd left by then. So no, these phones are not Richard Allen's burner phone. No, because according to the PCA, a car resembling Richard Allen's black Ford Focus did flannel shirt guy see Derek? Yes. Yeah. Derek asked flannel shirt guy. Flannel shirt guy was coming from the bridge. Like he was on the trail that leads from the Mourning Bridge. And Derek was coming like walking along that trail and said, have you seen two girls? And flannel shirt guy said no. And that's why Derek chose the other trail and went down to the creek to see if he could see them there. Didn't see them there, so went back up and then walked towards the Freedom Bridge and caught up with flannel shirt guy again. Flannel shirt guy was walking towards Freedom Bridge. So Derek must have been like rushing, panicking probably. And he caught up with him. So yeah, they exchanged words. There was another question. Yes, Elvis has confessed twice. Yeah, confessed. Yeah. Okay, so if we're to believe the PCA, if we're to believe that Richard Allen arrived, you know, his Ford Focus was caught on the Who's Your Harvey Store camera at 1:27, and then it's Richard Allen on the bridge at 2:13, and then he goes guys down the hill and the girls are murdered, and then he's seen by Sarah Carbo muddy and bloody on County Road North as she passed the Who's Your Harvey Store camera at 3:57. Well, no, we can't have that. So again, it's like I always say with this case, we have like colliding universes. You can't have Richard Allen arriving and then leaving at 1:27 and 3:57, right? If you agree with that, you can't then agree that Richard Allen was the murderer with a burner phone, because two of these phones were still at the crime scene area from 12:39. So what, 50 minutes before supposedly Richard Allen arrived, and then for nearly an hour after Richard Allen supposedly left. Those two sets of facts cannot coexist in the same universe. They can't. So you're going to have to rethink if you think that this was Richard Allen with his burner phone, watching his stock ticker on his burner phone. Who takes a burner phone to a crime scene to watch a stock ticker? Anyhow, let's move on. The defence has sought out but has not been provided any documents or reports that contradict or refute said geofencing evidence, but have not found such evidence, nor has the prosecutor provided any when defence requested reports on said geofencing. So the prosecution might have evidence that refutes this geofencing. This map might have been created and then they realised it was really inaccurate and they ditched it. Well, okay then, where's that rationale? Why is that map still in discovery if it's been refuted? And where's the evidence that it has been refuted? The crap are being corrupt. They are. All right. When Tony Liggett drafted his affidavit for search warrant for Richard Allen's home, he, Liggett, concealed from Judge Diener. Do you remember Judge Diener at the beginning of the case before Gull? He recused himself. So he is the Carroll County judge. He recused himself at the day that he had Richard Allen shipped off to Westville, saying that there was too much bloodlust and he was scared for his family. That's the judge. All right. And then they got Gull. All right. So, concealed from Judge Diener the fact that at least 3 phones and the people using those phones were moving in and around the crime scene at times when the murders would have been taking place according to law enforcement timelines, and that Richard Allen was not in any way connected to those phones. Richard Allen, no connection to the crime scene. This is insane. Tony Liggett should have notified Judge Diener that certain people who are not named Richard Allen, nor connected to Richard Allen, were moving in and around the crime scene at the time when Liggett claims the murders were being committed. You know, if you gave any judge that's not Francis Gull, if you gave any judge this information, they'd be like, what in the blazes has gone on here? If this judge was truly impartial, balancing the scales of justice as they should be balanced, there would be at the very least a Frank's hearing based on this information. Is there going to be a Frank's hearing? Doubt it. It's reasonable to conclude that if Tony Liggett had notified Judge Diener that certain people, not named Richard Allen, nor connected to Richard Allen, were moving in and around the crime scene, then Judge Diener would not have signed the affidavit, especially based upon the paucity of evidence otherwise contained in the affidavit connecting Richard Allen to the murders. Said geofencing information would have provided evidence to Judge Diener that negated Richard Allen's presence at the crime scene. Liggett should have told Judge Diener that crucial, relevant, and exculpatory information, which had been available since 2017, especially when Liggett's affidavit was written in October 2022, over 5 years later. But they needed to make an arrest because Liggett was up for election for sheriff. And he wasn't doing very well because he had an opponent who absolutely whooped his ass in a debate. You know, Liggett wanted the sheriff's job, and Liggett's been the head detective on the case, for years. Therefore, wouldn't it be great for Liggett, for his campaign, if an arrest was made? Yeah, it would. Yeah. All right. Additionally, Sergeant Jerry Holman's September 22nd, 2023 memorialization of his interview with Jeffrey Turco once again reveals that Holman attempted to deceive the reader of said report by leaving out key information and words uttered from the mouth of Turco concerning the likelihood that the sticks left behind were in fact runes, making Odinism's involvement in the murders more likely and worth investigating. Holman also failed to recite the full words of Turco concerning the plausibility that those who left the runes behind were involved in some type of human sacrifice. On September 22nd, 2023, Holman wrote a report in which he failed to mention the word rune or any derivation thereof. When memorializing the words of Turco, runes were a big part of Turco's interviews, yet Holman chose to exclude the word rune or any derivation of that word from his report. Instead, the relevant part of Holman's report was the following. So this is what Holman said about his conversation with Professor Jeffrey Turco. I asked him to summarize his findings, and he said they were inconclusive. In his opinion, he thought the sticks were placed deliberately, but were unsure what they meant. He said that he provided some educational guesses in his report. I asked him if the Odin religion practiced ritualistic human sacrifice, and he said no. He stated that no evidence or research indicates that religion practicing human sacrifice. He told me that if someone Google searched it, that they may see that Vikings were accused of human sacrifices, but he said there was no proof of it. I asked him if he ever heard of ritualistic human sacrifices around here, and he said no. He told me that not even in Norway, where this type of religion is more prevalent, had he heard of any ritualistic human sacrifice. What Holman failed to write in this report were Turco's words that more strongly detailed how Odinism was likely involved in the murders due to the likelihood that the sticks were formed into a unique script. It's a given. And how it was very plausible that human sacrifice could be a component of said murders. Because Holman had sworn under oath in his August 10th, 2023 deposition that the sticks found at the crime scene did not represent Odinism or any type of cult worshipping or any type of a group that would have conducted the crime. So that's exactly what he said. Those are his words. It was in Holman's interest to hide the actual words of Professor Turco concerning the likelihood that the sticks were formed as runes are significantly featured in Odinism. Turco's words and information that Holman left out of his report include the following. After viewing the ways the sticks at the crime scene were arranged, quote, it was a given that the pattern of sticks was someone's attempt to replicate a Germanic runic script. One of Turco's colleagues, a Harvard professor with even more expertise, agreed. Odinism is an extreme neo-pagan, neo-heathenism ideology that has right-wing racist connotations. Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal were known to be involved in extremist racist groups. We've heard from Patrick's own mouth that black bears do not breed with polar bears. Oh, dear. Dear me. Although he could not necessarily interpret the intended meaning of these sticks formed into runes, the stick configuration were pretty clearly runic, and that he could, quote, certainly imagine that this was somebody's idea, that when you do human sacrifice, you carve runes. There are some poetic sources that would sort of support the idea that somebody might have come across. That scenario seems entirely plausible to me. Those were his actual words. That it's someone's idea that, oh, let's, if we're doing a sacrifice, we've got to put runes on it. We've got to do runes. Right? But they didn't do it very well. Yeah. Odin Masons. Absolutely. Furthermore, Dr. Turco discussed how runes were thought to have magical significance and would be used in incantations in rituals that are there, and that there is a sacrificial connection in mythological poetry. According to police reports, Brad Holder told Amber Holder, so that was his ex-wife, that he and Patrick Westphal had a falling out over something that happened in the woods near the river during a ritual. Patrick Westphal, in his conversation with Sleuth Intuition, however, said he fell out with Brad Holder when he found out Brad Holder was going to a Christian church. So he took Brad's patch, his Odin patch, and kicked him out of his Asatru group because he can't be both. You can't be a proper Odinist and also be a Christian at the same time. Okay, that's what he said. In other words, here is what Holman did not write in his report. Turco told me that it was a given that the arrangement of the sticks were part of a runic script. Investigators have learned that runes are a feature of those who practice Odinism, and those who practice Odinism are sometimes aligned with racist extremist groups. Brad Holder's son had some type of dating relationship with one of the victims, so Logan Holder was going out with Abby Williams. Okay. And Brad Holder was an Odinist fascinated with runes, which I found throughout his Facebook page. Still there. Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal are also affiliated with racist extremist groups. Also, Turco admitted that it was entirely plausible that somebody would read something on the internet indicating that Viking religions involve human sacrifice, and that same person would have an idea that when conducting a human sacrifice, runes should be carved and that runes have a magical significance and would be used in rituals. Brad Holder told his ex-wife that Brad and Patrick Westphal had a falling out in the woods near a river in February 2017 due to something that happened at a ritual. Instead of using Turco's words detailed in the previous paragraph, Holman wrote that Turco's findings were inconclusive and then failed to even mention the word rune in every single solitary time. If you were trying to hide Turco's actual opinion about the linkage between the stick configurations and a runic script, and the entirely plausible opinion that human sacrifice could be a component of the murders, then you would draft your report as Sergeant Holman did, as quoted from his report in paragraph 18 above. If you are trying to provide an accurate accounting of Turco's opinion, then you would write it as written in paragraph 22 above. Due to Sergeant Holman's sworn testimony, so swore on oath, from his August 10th, 2023 deposition, Sergeant Holman had a lot at stake when he interviewed Turco. Ideally, in order for Holman's sworn August 10th, 2023 testimony to be true, Turco would have told Holman words to the effect that configuration was not runic and therefore its arrangement does not represent Odinism or any type of cult worshipping or any type of a group that would have conducted the crime. Unfortunately for Sergeant Holman, Turco did not state words to that effect, quite the opposite. Okay. This explains why Sergeant Holman initially attempted to hide the identity of the Purdue professor. Yeah, no idea what that person's name was. Oh, I don't think we'll ever find them, honestly. Yeah, okay. C. Franks 2. And then attempted to conceal Turco's actual words in Holman's September 22nd, 2023 report, that it was a given that someone was trying to replicate a Germanic runic script, and that was entirely plausible that a person believed that human sacrifice involved the use of runes. In defense counsel's experience, some lawyers simply don't listen to a tape recording of an interview, but rather rely on the veracity of police reports that memorialize that interview. Yeah. I don't think we can accuse Rosie and Baldwin of just taking a police report's word for it. All right. In this very case, for example, Brad Holder's February 17th, 2017 videotape statement was purportedly erased. We've talked about that previous as well. Oh dear. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. You know, somebody just left the tape running and it just overrode itself magically. It was magic. It overrode itself and we lost all our interviews, including Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall. Okay. Only a short report memorialising that taped interview exists. Therefore, the defence is being forced to rely entirely on the words and context the author of that interview chose to include in that report, rather than the entirety of the actual words uttered by Holder. The way that Holman memorialised his interview with Turco, detailed above, should cause alarm about what law enforcement choose to include or not include in their reports. The tape recording is the best evidence. What Brad Holder shared with investigators in his February 17th, 2017 interview, the authors chose to leave out, even innocently not knowing what was important at the time, could be exculpatory in nature or lead to exculpatory evidence exonerating Richard Allen. However, at this time, we are expected to simply accept that the words written by the author of Holder's erased interview provide the full gamut of information needed to protect Richard Allen's rights. Again, Holman's memorialisation of Turco's words in this case should cause grave concern to this court as it relates to any erased videotaped interviews. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've also got Westfall's interview from February 19th, 2017, that was also lost. I'm going to shout soon. I'm trying not to shout because it gives me, I lose my voice. Okay. If no one listened to Turco's actual words spoken to Holman on that audio tape, then Holman's deceptive memorialised report would leave the reader with an entirely different perspective than what Turco's words actually revealed. As it relates to Franks, the defence is required to show that law enforcement acted intentionally when including false information in the affidavit or when omitting important information from the affidavit. It would be highly unlikely that Liggett would admit, I intentionally omitted important information from the affidavit, and I also intentionally included false information in the affidavit. Also, I wrote the affidavit with a reckless disregard for the truth. No, of course he's not going to say that. If the standard to get a Franks hearing is that law enforcement must admit that they acted intentionally or recklessly, then a Franks hearing is a legal fiction, as no law enforcement officer will make such admissions. Therefore, the defence is left with providing information of times and occasions when law enforcement attempted to conceal evidence or falsify information in other contexts in this case. Franks 1 and 2 provided multiple examples of law enforcement concealing or attempting to conceal evidence and of law enforcement not telling the truth under oath, all backed up with exhibits that support those contentions. Not that Francis Gull is going to want to, watch any exhibits, watch any interviews or read any exhibits, look at any pictures in the exhibits. She's just going to deny without reading or even any consideration whatsoever. I don't believe that she read the 136-page memorandum. I don't think she looked at any of those exhibits. That's just my opinion. But I don't think she did before she denied the original Franks hearing. I don't think she did. I think she just chose to disqualify the defence instead. And then She told Libretto and Scremin, when they were the interim attorneys, that if they wanted a Franks hearing, if they wanted to adopt the memorandum that Rosie and Baldwin had filed, they could do, and she'd give them a Franks hearing. That's what she actually said to Libretto and Scremin. Probably thinking, oh, they're just going to think all of this ordinism is just complete balls, and I'll never have to worry about it. And then Libretto comes along and says that ordinism's scary and it's a real thing. So you've got to remember that we've not just had Rosie and Baldwin that have seen the treatment of Richard Allen in prison, that have seen the discovery. They've seen the evidence in the discovery, at least the discovery that Nick's given them. You've got also Libretto and Scremin that have had the courtesy of being able to look through all of that discovery information. And we don't know what Scremin thought of it, but Libretto has come out and spoken and said that he believes Alan's innocent. And he didn't need to say that, and he didn't need to say that, because he was like, by the time he made that interview, he was off the case anyway. So it's not just Baldwin and Rosie that have drawn these conclusions. This is other lawyers. Like, if you count up the collective experience of Rosie, Baldwin, Libretto and Scremin, you've got close to 100 years worth of experience of lawyering. So I don't know what to tell you. In section 3 of the September 18th, 2023 Franks memorandum, the defence provided irrefutable evidence that Liggett provided false information in his affidavit concerning the words that Sarah Carbo spoke face-to-face with Tony Liggett in 2017 when describing the man that she saw on the road just before 4 p.m. Liggett told Judge Dina that the man Carbo observed was the same man that Betsy Blair observed on the Morning High Bridge approximately 2 hours earlier. The problem was that what Carbo told Liggett in 2017 concerning this man's description was not the same as Betsy Blair's description, i.e. Liggett did not tell the truth. Liggett misrepresented Carbo's words so that they were consistent with Blair's description, and then, for good measure, added that Carbo observed blood on the man walking on the road, when that is not what she told Liggett to his face in 2017, i.e. Liggett did not tell the truth. If you're still thinking that the prosecution are doing a great job and that Richard Allen is 100% definitely guilty, then I would invite you to very quietly go away, sit in a corner, and consider the term confirmation bias. To go look it up, I want you to study it. And I want you to really reflect on the possibility that you are experiencing confirmation bias. The defence would ask the court to reread section 3. Well, she didn't read it in the first place, so she's not got anything to reread. But anyhow, to read section 3 in its entirety and also to review the attached exhibits to the September 18th, 2023 Franks memo that provide the absolute proof that Liggett misrepresented Carbo's words. The defence would ask the court to reread section 3 in its entirety and also to review the attached exhibits that provide evidence that Liggett omitted crucial information concerning Betsy Blair's description of the man she observed from only 50 feet away on the High Bridge, as well as the description of a vehicle found at the CPS lot after she left the trail that does not match any of Richard Allen's vehicles. So just to remind you, Betsy Blair is the person who saw a poofy-haired man in his 20s on platform 1 of the Morning High Bridge around 2 p.m. Does Richard Allen have poofy hair? Could he be mistaken from 50 feet away to be a man in his 20s? No. And Sarah Carbo's sketch, or one that it was actually I think a collection of different descriptions. The other man, the older man in the sketch. Hold on, let me show you. You know what sketches I'm talking about, but I'm going to show you anyway. Just let me find a picture. There's the old one. There's the new one. Have I got one together? Sure, I've got one of them together. Here we go. Got it. All right. Oops. Instead of there we go. All right, so this is the sketch that Betsy Blair said was 10 out of 10 for the man that she saw around 2 p.m. on the bridge. Young man in his 20s with poofy hair, poofy dark hair. Sarah Carbo, however, said that the man on County Road North that she saw around 3:57 looked more like this man. So these two men cannot be the same person, regardless of what that numpty, what's his name? Oh, Doug Carter said. He said, oh, well, when we arrest the actual killer, these two will merge and they're not, it'll be somewhere in between. Does Richard Allen look somewhere in between those two guys? He looks more like the older sketch than the younger sketch. But this younger sketch is the dude that Betsy Blair saw from 50 feet away. In his 20s with dark poofy hair. And sidebar, they concealed that information from the public until 2019 when they reinvigorated the investigation, said, oh, there was a complete change of direction. And this older sketch, which came out in, was it June or July 2017? This guy is the killer. They changed it completely to a completely different guy in 2019. Come on now. Those two guys. The guy that Sarah Carbo saw was wearing a tan coat and was muddy. But I would expect he was probably a farm worker going home or something. Right? I walk about my village. I've gone for a walk. I'm muddy. If somebody gave a description of me, it'd be that weirdo that walks about like muddy all the time. So you can't add blood to that description, though. And they're definitely not the same guy that Betsy Blair saw. And Betsy Blair did not see a black Ford Focus. She saw a non-black vehicle that looked like her dad's car that he used to have when she was young, which was a 1965 Comet. Nothing like. Richard Allen's car was not seen at the CPS building. Was not seen. There was no description of a black Ford Focus. There was a smart car. There was an SUV. There was a purple PT Cruiser and a Comet. None of those look like a Ford Focus. None of them. All right. The defence was asked the court to reread the rest of the Franks 1 and 2. She didn't read it in the first place. Just ask her to read it. in order to gain perspective on the many instances of law enforcement not telling the truth or attempting to conceal evidence and the truth. The third Frank's notice provides additional evidence of omitted information from which Judge Diener should have been advised concerning 3 phones shown to be moving in and around the crime scene at the time when law enforcement would state the murders were being committed. This third Frank's notice provides additional evidence that Sergeant Holman's swore deposition testimony was false. He swore an oath and he lied concerning the findings of the Purdue professor, as Turkel's own words confirm in a September 19, 2023 interview. This third Frank's notice provides additional evidence of law enforcement's intentionality of concealing evidence, as Sergeant Holman's September 2023 report attempted to conceal the actual words of Jeffrey Turkel. Again, Sergeant Holman has sworn under oath that Turkel did not find Odinism or cults as being involved in the murders, but Turkel's own words show Holman's testimony to be false. It was in Holman's best interest, therefore, to admit or water down much of Turkel's own words, which is exactly what Holman did. The defence is asking, based upon this third Frank's notice, as well as the other Frank's notices, to set this matter for a Frank's hearing to argue that all fruits of the searches of Richard Allen's home be suppressed. Additionally, the defence requests that on this serious matter raised in Frank's 1, 2 and 3, as well as the exhibits that back up those matters, the court issue findings of fact and conclusions of law as to how and why the court ruled in whatever manner it rules at the defence on the defence request. Wherefore, defence counsel by counsel respectfully, blah, 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 Andrew Baldwin. There's this certificate of service. So I think that's pretty convincing, in my opinion. I don't understand. Like, if she just denies this without any hearing at all, I don't know what to tell you. I do not know what to tell you, other than she's biased, and why she's being biased, we can speculate on. Why law enforcement have just consistently lied, we can speculate on, but the facts are still the facts. We haven't seen all the facts. We haven't seen all the discovery. But the information that has been given to the defence shows some very concerning pieces of information that are potentially exculpatory. And all of the reasons why law enforcement have lied need to be investigated. So there you go. There you go. For now, I rest my case. For now, until the next motion comes out. Probably later today when she just denies. Deny. Anyhow, right, I'm going to go. Don't intend this to be long because I'm trying to keep live streams fairly short so that people, people on the replay can actually watch them. But this is huge. It's huge. I mean, that geofencing stuff blew my mind. Even if 60 to 100 yards, is, a little bit off because of the, positioning of the cell towers. Even if that's the case, none of those phones at that scene that were geofenced were Richard Allen's. And the fact that 2 of those phones were there between 12:39 and 5:49 is shocking. Who do those phones belong to? Shocking. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me. if you've been following the Madeline Soto case, I posted a video over on Michelle After Dark about an hour before I went live with this. So if you've not had a chance to watch that and you're following Madeline's case, then go and watch that. It's only 15 minutes. Share it. Share this. Sharing's really good. If you have your own social media or you're in groups that, you know, you think people might be interested in my content, then please share. Please share them. And like this stream before you go out, before you leave, because it just helps boost it in the algorithm. All right, guys. Thank you as always to the mods. I don't know if I had any mods in, but thank you always. And thank you for the donations. And I will see you tomorrow, or maybe later if more motions come out, but most probably tomorrow. All right. Bye for now. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you soon.